Hello and welcome back to Forza Motorsport 7 of all things. I didn't expect to be back here, however, the Goodwood Festival of Speed was, as of recording, last weekend, and it sucked. It was a complete disgrace. The renowned hill climb shootout was just a qualifying format, and then they had an actual top 10 shootout. I'm hoping that's just because of the condensed schedule, because it rained out on Saturday. If that's a new thing, that really sucks. So, since the British did such a terrible job of running a hill climb, I decided to run my own hill climb in Australia. I've used this course before. It's basically going the other way, up and then down Mount Panorama in Bathurst. I love this course. I think it's fantastic. It's really technical, has some high-speed corners, has lots of braking zones, really technical, very little room for error. We're getting a nice demonstration run from the drift version of the BMW M3, very close to the barriers. It's not a timed run, although there will be 25 cars going up the hill today. This one is just for those who are not familiar with the course. I've run this course before, back when I used to play Forza 7, like, full-time. And yeah, not only is it a very good course, not only is the car list very interesting in Forza Motorsport, but it's also kind of poetic that since the British were such just blatant, criminally bad at a hill climb this year, they should be sent to Australia. Okay, all serious now, all serious. We got one more corner to go. This is our demonstration run. And then we shall start off with a familiar face as the E30 M3, I guess 3 Series, drift car crosses the line. And I say a familiar face because we're sticking with BMW. Arguably one of the last great BMWs, in fact. Despite the fact it is our slowest car, it's a pretty fast one in real life. The BMW M2. I say it's one of the last great BMWs. Rear-wheel drive, straight 6-engine, actually lightweight, unlike the new M2. I love this thing. It reminds me of the old M3s. And for good reason, it basically is an old M3 when you think about it. So like the E46 generation, fantastic car, about 350 horsepower, 3,400 pounds. And it is the lowest PI car, it's B-Class 545, so we start out theoretically with the slowest car and work our way up to the fastest car. We're going in PI order here, essentially. And you know what? This thing is actually doing a pretty good job. It's got a decent amount of grip, a decent amount of turn. The brakes are pretty good because it is a modern car with relative lightweight. It's not a Lotus or anything, but for a modern car with safety features and electronics and everything, it's pretty light. We only got a few more corners to go. It's a solid entry-level vehicle, sort of a normal car, a palate cleanser before we get to the really crazy and wacky stuff, if you will. Just a baseline to see how we compare. We have one more corner to go, though, and it's a nice wide late apex, and you can cut in and get a maximum run on the straightaway, heading across the line, and it is going to obviously be the fastest time of the day so far, a 1:33.8. Let's see how long it takes to beat it. Well, this certainly has more power than the BMW, that is for sure. Although, whether it's suited or not to this environment, I'm not so sold on, because this is the R.J. Anderson Polaris RZR Pro 4 truck. Basically, a super stadium truck without the slick tires. It's a monster, over 800 horsepower, rear-wheel drive. It is a bit old-fashioned, though. No aerodynamics of any kind, 3-speed gearbox, rear-wheel drive, over 5,000 pounds. It's a heavy lumbering beast, and you can see it does not have the same turn and the same grip as the BMW. Question is, though, will that many hundreds of horsepower be enough to out-accelerate the lightweight Beamer so that it offsets the huge issues that it has in the corners? It's very leery. It's probably a riot to drive, I would imagine. But, yeah, it's not looking particularly fast. I mean, sideways is cool, but it's not conducive to lap time. It's sort of old school in that way. Sort of like the old 1950s Formula 1 cars where you actually go slightly sideways just to maintain the momentum, keep everything smooth, pointing in the right direction. This is gonna be close, in all honesty. It's a little bit behind right now. It lost a lot of time on a mountain section, but it should have really good acceleration on the exit of this corner. It's a bit wide, clips the side, almost goes into the wall. It's going to have the legs on the line, but it's not enough, a 134.7. But it is less than a second off, and that's better than I thought. We go once again to the other end of the spectrum, from a normal road car to a crazy lunatic off-road racing truck, to a very light, old-school Japanese Grand Prix racer. No, not a Formula 1 car. The Japanese Grand Prix was a separate event for a number of years, and this was one of its contestants, the Nissan R382. Not R382, the R380 second iteration. It's very light. It looks like a Le Mans car, but I don't think it actually ever competed there. And instead it was used after the Grand Prix finished. It was used for speed running. And it's very close to the walls on the uphill section. That was, they probably need some new underwear after that one, that is for sure. It's very light, decent amount of power, a little less power than the M2, but it is so much lighter. But it's old school. Again, no aerodynamics. Again, not very grippy tires. So it does slide about a little bit. It's not as composed. Yes, it's light, which means it will help under braking, but they're still really old brakes. It's a speedrunning car at the end of the day. It's not gonna be the best in the corners, but it has that mid-engine lightweight nature going for it, which means we are on the final corner again, nearly hitting the walls. A little twitch on the exit, chuck it in, a little bit of leaning, we get a good exit again, and it's just onto the straightaway. It's going a lot faster, 2 seconds faster than the BMW. Very good from the Nissan R382. Well, I mentioned the vintage F1 cars earlier in the video. Well, now let's see how one drives the original Formula 1 World Champion, the Alfa Romeo 158. If you think Mercedes or Red Bull is dominant, well, I hate to break it to you, but Alfa Romeo has something that no one has done before. They won every single race of the season except for the Indy 500, in which they did not compete. For some reason, the Indy 500 was part of the Formula 1 World Championship, despite the fact that no Formula 1 champions really went to it. I don't understand it either, but this thing, excluding Indianapolis, has a 100% win rate in 1950. It's a beast. It's also on bicycle tires. The absolute mad lads drove it with bicycle tires. And clearly, the driver of this has not changed, since they are very aggressive on the curves as they header over the mountain. It is down on the Nissan just a little bit, though. They're pretty much neck and neck. It's going to make up some time on the straightaway. It's a lot lighter with more horsepower, but it doesn't have the same controllability through the corners. It's similar, but the tires are just a little bit smaller. The aerodynamics are a little bit less refined, so we'll see if that acceleration is enough. Big sideways movement coming out of the final corner. It's going to be very close. It's very close. It's not it's not enough. 0.02 of a second slower than the Nissan, but it's slower nonetheless. Well, we have one last vintage race car to try and beat the Nissan, and it's another legend from Italy, and this time it is from Maserati, the Type 61 birdcage, or as I like to call it, the bathtub. Once you look at the back end with that name in mind, you will never unsee it. I apologize, Type 61 fans. This is, in my personal opinion, I've seen one of these in real life, I've seen it route to the red line in real life, the best sounding car I've ever heard. It's a tiny, beautiful little thing, and it is slithering up this hill. Similar to the Nissan, only a little bit more powerful, a little bit lighter. It doesn't have the aerodynamics, and it is front-engined, but it is just that little bit better in the power-to-weight ratio department. So we'll have to see if that comes into play. He's also being super aggressive over the curves, 2 wheels on the dirt. That might get investigation from the FIA, but I'm not the FIA, so that is A-okay. Heading around, just 2 more corners to go. Oh, that was very close to the wall. Just does not have the grip to get over to the left-hand side, which is the ideal line. You really want to do left side, late apex onto the straightaway, and then late apex onto the final straightaway. Just like that. That's what he should have done in the other corner. But he's still just a little bit of a wobble, maintaining the speed, and it is going to be way faster. Another second off in a 130.5. Nicely done, Maserati. Nicely done. I suspect that unless something breaks and the driver crashes, the Maserati's reign at the top is going to be short-lived because we've entered the 21st century with our next road car of the day, the track car of the group, the Shelby GT350R, a proper flat-plane crank muscle car. And it is a glorious track star. It was so good to drive. And it has over 500 horsepower from the naturally aspirated V8. It's just a really controllable, dare I say, sports car. It's an affordable track car, if you will. It cost less than 75 grand back in the day. And sure enough, it's flying. Interestingly, not as fast as I thought. See how it looks going over the hill for the split time, and we got one more section before that. Yeah, that's interesting. It's up for sure, as obviously, but it's not up by a huge amount. I was expecting a few seconds faster. Instead, it's about, what, a second near enough? Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so that Maserati had some real pace. The Shelby is not a slow vehicle, and it is not gapping the Maserati nearly as quick as I thought it would. It's nicely around the final corner, clips the wall. Sign almost hits the wall because I had 2 wheels on the dirt, but we are across the line a second faster, which is good. But considering the Maserati is from the 50s, I was expecting a little better from our new leader. Well, let's see if our new leader can keep up with a concept car, shall we? Sort of a fortune teller for a future design evolution. I'm talking about the Bentley EXP10 Speed 6, sort of the concept car for the refreshed Bentley Continental. I think it looks stunning, and is all-wheel drive, and I think it has a W12 in it, if I remember correctly. So, great launch, very heavy, more of a sports GT car, but that launch and that horsepower is momentous. So we'll see if the Shelby can reel it in, because obviously it's going to have the legs on this first half. The uphill climb especially has lots of acceleration zones. They're fast acceleration zones, but still they require you to really get punch out of the corners. But it's wide heading to the top of the hill and nearly hits the wall. Really slow there, but it is still fast, and it is up. It is up, but not by a huge margin. That little incident, or near incident, at the top of the hill cost it that little buffer that it had. Okay, it may have been the fastest down the straightaway, but we got 2 more corners to go. We'll make that 1 more corner to go if you exclude this seemingly never-ending right-hander. It is fast. Brakes are surprisingly good for such a heavy GT concept car. Usually these things don't work and they're just display pieces, but Bentley did a real one, and it is faster by less than 1/10 of a second, which is purely the launch. The Shelby is the faster car, but this has the 4-wheel drive, and that is why it's our new leader. We had a rear-wheel drive car, then an all-wheel drive car, and now it's time for a front-wheel drive car. Although we've gone back to racing. No more concept cars or road cars for the time being. We're going to the British Touring Car Championship with the Mercedes A45 AMG. An abysmal start. It's going to be way off the pace in terms of the sprint down to this first corner. Indeed it is. But the question is, with slick tires and aero and suspension and everything, can it claw that time back? It doesn't have a lot of horsepower, but it is very light, less than 3,000 pounds. And again, racing slicks with full aero. So it's going to be quick through the corners, but front-wheel drive, is it going to be too hampered by the front tires doing both the turning, the braking, and the accelerating? That's a lot of ass for that rubber, and they're not particularly big tires in the grand scheme of things. So, ooh, very close. You can tell they're really wringing everything out of this car, trying to claw back that time, but it's not working. It is not working. They're going to also lose some time on the straightaway, so they're going to make up the time. They got to make it up now in the braking zones, in the corners. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I think that raw acceleration of the road cars is just going to be too great. We're on the final corner now. It was nice and tidy, no mistakes, very clean, very precise, but it's not enough. A 129.8. It's a few tenths off, but not bad given the launch. Okay, we go to another lightweight Forza Motorsport. This is significantly lighter than even the BTCC car was, because this is a Formula Ford car. And it's basically a feeder series for other open-wheeled racing. It's a tiny little go-kart with a Ford EcoBoost engine. It makes about 200 horsepower. And it's a twitchy little death trap is what it is. There's just no grip at all. The arrow, I don't know what it's there for. I don't think it does anything. You can see it's just sliding everywhere, wiggling its way up the hill. But it's also like 1,200 pounds, which means it's fast. You saw it's pretty much up there on the straightaway heading into the first corner. We crest the hill, and yeah, it's good. It's really good. It's terrifying and dangerous, but if you can master this, you can definitely progress up the ladder into other Formula Series very close to the wall. Holy cow. There's probably cleaner runs out there without the sliding, but he is full commitment, that is for sure. At least as full as you can with the level of confidence this vehicle provides you. Holy cow, it is gonna be fast. It may have murdered the sign, but it also murdered our target time. 1:22.8, it's like 7 seconds faster near enough. Holy cow. Yeah, the Formula Ford car was fast. Very fast. But next up is a very special vehicle for this track, because this is home turf. If I was going to run a V8 supercar, you know darn well that I was going to use a Holden, may it rest in peace. It's a purely Australian brand. I know it's technically GM, but let's be real here. It's a monstrous sedan back when V8 supercars actually were sedans and not Mustangs and Camaros. It's a throwback to a bygone era, and a throwback with delivery to one of the greatest races in all of motorsport, not just V8 supercars. The 2014 Bathurst 1000, down to the wire between two guys that nearly didn't start the race at all. Phenomenal battle. I actually did a video on it on this channel. But the supercar is living up to its name. It has a lot more horsepower. It's a lot heavier than the Formula Ford, but it's got a lot more horsepower and a lot more composed. Never thought I would say that about a maniac V8 supercar four-door sedan, but there you go. It is far better to drive than the Formula Ford car. You have a lot more confidence in it, and it shows with the time. It's actually not a whole lot faster, given the horsepower advantage and the controllability advantage, but the sheer power of it all thunders down the straights into the lead by 0.4 of a second, just under that. Really did the Aussies proud on that one, that's for sure. Well, we have a common theme here, rear-wheel drive, naturally aspirated V8s, but it's a road car once again. We go from a normal car to a track car to a fully blown supercar. In my opinion, the last truly brilliant Ferrari supercar, the 458 Speciale. It's got one of the best engines ever made. It's got iconic styling. It looks absolutely stunning. Timeless is the word I would prefer to use. It sounds brilliant, and it is so nice to drive. It has less power than the V8 supercar, but it is mid-engine, which means it should be better through the corners despite the lack of aero. Obviously, the bodywork generates quite a bit of aero on its own, but it doesn't have the huge wings and canards and splitters and everything, so it is down in that respect. A little bit of oversteer, cresting the hill, it did. That might have cost it a little bit. It's very close between these two. This vehicle might have the leg up on the acceleration department just because of the gearing, if nothing else. Maybe the power response, I don't know, it's very close between these two vehicles in terms of specs. I don't know which way this is going to go. It's been very close all run so far. Gets a lovely late apex, power on, and it's just to the line, and it's going to be close, but it's not enough of 22.7. Oh, it was close, but not close enough. The Ferrari is not the new leader. The Holden stays on top. So this field has had some pretty crazy vehicles, from the Pro 4 truck to the Maserati to the EXP10 to the Commodore V8 supercar. But this takes the cake for craziest vehicle of this entire show, the Lancia Delta S4 Group B Rally. Four-wheel drive, less than 2,000 pounds. This competed on dirt, by the way. It is this fast. It has demolished the straightaway leading up to turn 1, that split time, completely obliterated it, because it makes 550 horsepower conservatively. It makes a conservative 550 horsepower in a sub 2,000 pound four-wheel drive mid-engine hatchback that apparently loves to wheelie through corners. Or at the very least, tripod. Whoa, that's gotta be a bit terrifying. It is up. It is up on the Ferrari. It is up on the Commodore, sorry. It is up on the Commodore. We're on the downhill already. You can see it really squirming under brakes from that rally suspension and those rally tires, but the acceleration and the aero is just an unstoppable force on this car. It may be the best car to never win the World Rally Championship, and it is around the final corner to the line, all 550 horsepower to all four wheels, and it is our new leader by almost a second. A rally car, almost a second faster than a full-blown V8 touring car. That must have been terrifying back in the day. But much like the Maserati, I don't think the Lancia's lead is going to last very long, because we go back from the 80s to the 21st century with a full-blown GT3 car, the McLaren MP4-12C GT3, that competed in the Black Pain GT class. GT Championship, I should say. Yeah, it's a full-blown race car. It's the type of vehicle you would expect to see at Le Mans, or 24 Hours in Nürburgring. It's gonna be a rocket ship. The question is, how much faster is it gonna be? Yes, it was slower on the initial acceleration zone up to the first corner because it is rear-wheel drive with the same amount of horsepower, but aerodynamics, suspension, semis or fully slick tires, it's gonna be faster. But, the time isn't really that much different at all, actually. The time is really not that much different. That Lancia was seriously quick, nearly as fast as a GT3 car. Okay, well the GT3 car might have its work to do. It's heading in the final corner, it can brake super late, it's super composed because it doesn't have rally suspension on it. Little wide on the apex though, not a perfect run through there, but it is just gonna be faster. 121.21 for the GT3 car. It's in the lead, but not by as comfortable a margin as one would have thought. We just had a GT3 car, so why not have a GT2 car up next? This is an interesting one. The BMW M3, was it the E92 M3? So it's a GT2 car, pretty similar specs to a GT3. I don't fully understand the difference, but we're gonna roll with it. I think it's a pretty similar vehicle. It's a bit older than the 12C. Very close to the wall, clipped the mirror a little bit in terms of closeness, so that's about as close as you can get. Question is though, front engine, same aero essentially. is it going to be faster than the McLaren? That's the real million-dollar question. They're very similar in terms of class. They're very similar in terms of time so far. But the BMW is definitely being more aggressive on the curves. Very close to the wall again. You could have even fit a sheet of paper in between the car and the wall there. And it is up. It is up. It is gaining. It is making ground on that McLaren. In fact, it is pulling away from it, would be a better word for it. It is pulling away. Can it really lead? By how much can it lead? That's the question then, if it is that fast on the mountain section. With one more corner to go, a little wide on the exit, nearly ran it into the wall. Would have been a shame, but it is faster, nearly a sub 120, but not quite. That's a lot faster than the McLaren. A lot faster. That is surprising. Maybe to beat the GT class, you have to go old school. Really old school. I'm talking back when prototype cars were open cockpits. The Ferrari 312P built for the World Sports Car Championship was the thing back then. The Group 5, Group 7 cars that raced under the FIA banner. They're not really sports cars, but they were classified as sports cars for some reason. It looks very much like a Can-Am car from America, but it's not. It's a fully fledged V12 Italian stallion, and it's a slidey Italian stallion, very committed to the uphill chicane. We'll have to see how its time is relative to the M3 once it actually crests the hill. We're still going up right now. We're about to reach the crest in, 2 corners? Yeah. Not as committed, playing it a little safe through there, carrying good speed though nonetheless, despite the apparent lack of aero, and it is up. It is way up, actually. Wow, okay. We haven't seen a split time like that in a while. We got one more corner to go. It's got a great power-weight ratio, huge rear tires, so it has no problems with oversteer if I'm honest. It may be a simple vehicle in terms of styling, in terms of efficiency of its aerodynamic usage, but it is going pretty fast. It's going to the top of the table, a sub 119. Yeah, that's respectable. That's some serious speed for 1971. Well, we saw the GT cars go really fast. What about a NASCAR? We saw this showdown this year at Le Mans with a modified NASCAR, taking it to the French bigwigs at Le Mans, beating the snot out of them by 4 seconds a lap. I don't think this is gonna do that, because the Le Mans NASCAR, the Garage 56 car, had better aero and less weight, and was used in an experimental research testbed for the future of the NASCAR Cup Series, their development vehicle, essentially. This is just a normal, 7th gen NASCAR? So, I don't think it's going to have the same pace. It does have an enormous amount of horsepower, over 200 more, I shouldn't say over, but around 200 more than the GT3 cars. But, it's very heavy and it's not very sophisticated. It is down in terms of time, not by much. It's actually similar to the McLaren in terms of time right now. And it is going to have a monstrous charge down the straightaway, but it might just lose too much time. It is a little too far back, I think, to beat the M3. Question is, can it go second? It's going nicely done around the final corner. No twitchiness, no scariness, and it is slower. Quite a bit slower, 7/10 of a second slower, near enough, for the NASCAR. It's fast, better than the McLaren, but not as good as the BMW. We're actually sticking with the late 60s, early 70s wedges, because we're going to proper Can-Am. I said the Ferrari looked like a Can-Am car, and well, let's use a Can-Am car next. The Chaparral 2E, arguably the most famous of the Can-Am cars because of its significance to motorsport. Not only did it have a comically tall rear wing, if you actually take the wing off and put it on the ground, it's actually taller than the car without the car. So yeah, a huge wing, and the first ever active aerodynamic piece added to a vehicle. So it acted as DRS. You can see it there. It goes flat when you go fast enough. That is decades ahead of its time. Super advanced technology. It never won a championship because McLaren was just too good, and they banned active aero for Can-Am after this vehicle started to show some promise, and McLaren couldn't have that at all. It's not as fast as the Ferrari, doesn't quite have the same horsepower, and although it is making up some time with the aerodynamics, it's not enough. That Ferrari is just too powerful while having the same ability through the corners. Which means it is looking like it's going to go second. Indeed it does. Just can't quite beat the Ferrari, even with that monstrous Chevy power plant. We go from a car that could have dominated if given enough time to a car that did, ever so briefly, dominate the world of American motor racing. The Audi 90 Quattro. This is the IMSA version. The previous version from, was it Trans Am? Decimated that class. The Quattro from GTO, the IMSA GTO class, didn't quite have the same success, mainly because they too banned its technology far too early because Americans were afraid of a European succeeding in their homegrown motorsport series. Regardless, it's a timeless vehicle. It's an absolute legend, partially because it has the loudest turbocharger in the world, and partially because it's a really wide car. It doesn't look it because the body lines are actually quite smooth, but it has a huge wide body kit with four-wheel drive and very clever but subtle aerodynamics. So again, it was faster on the launch. I don't think it was quite as fast as that Lancia, but yeah, it's definitely got the legs on the Ferrari on the mountain. It's just so consistent, and it is more modern than that Ferrari, and it has better traction out of the corner, so it's going to the top. Another impressive showing, a 1:18.3 from the Audi. Very fast. It's our new leader. This is technically a road car, in Britain only, but the Radical SR8 RX is up next. It's a track special everywhere else, although it can be driven on the road in Britain for some reason. Again, I don't know how this is road legal in that country, but it apparently is. It's a lightweight little LMP3 car, kind of, for the road that you can buy. Yeah, it's crazy. Just under 500 horsepower, less than 1,700 pounds. It held the Nürburgring lap record for a number of years, again, technically because of road legality in Britain only, and it is flying. It's the highest PI of the R-Class cars, 890, so it's considerably higher PI than the Audi, and that is why it is considerably up. Despite being rear-wheel drive and less powerful, you just can't beat lightweight and aerodynamics. Those two things are super important for racing, and the Radical has demonstrated that in space. I've seen these things quite a few times on the track. They're monsters. They can set lap records quite easily, and this one is certainly going to go to the top of our table at least, although I don't think it's going to stay there, despite a 1:15.3 being quite a tough benchmark to beat. Which is why I'm bringing out the big guns next. A classic Formula One car from the 1970s. I believe it's Mario Andretti's Lotus 77. A hugely important car. Following in the footsteps of an even more important car, the Lotus 72. This has everything that made the 72 brilliant. The proper aero, the side-mounted radiators. It was the basis for modern Formula One cars, and this sort of marked the beginning of the transition period from those early 70s F1 cars to the huge side pods that would eventually house the ground effect aerodynamics that we would see in late 70s and early 80s. And it also has a Cosworth DFV in it, meaning it's an absolute rocket ship that's very close to the walls. Don't do that, man! That was way too close for comfort. That was also way too close for comfort. Nerves of steel, I gotta say, nerves of steel. You get a nice late apex there, really get the power down. Those massive rear tires really helping it excel. Yeah, it's flying. It is absolutely flying way faster than the Radical, as if there was any doubt. Let's be real, this is a P-Class Formula 1 car, and sure enough, a 1:12, 3 seconds faster than the lightweight British track car. But before we get on to the truly crazy vehicles, we have one last road car, which is also a crazy vehicle, because we're going from a supercar to a hypercar. And if you want to go hyper, why not one of 7 Koenigsegg 1-1s. 1,341 horsepower, 1,341 kilograms of weight. Rear-wheel drive decimates the speed trap, nearly 200 miles an hour heading into turn 1, but it doesn't have the handling. It is a road car. It has a super comfy interior. It has road tires. It's got a road weight. It's not a particularly light car. Despite being 1,341 kilograms, that's over 3,000 pounds. Compared to the Lotus 77, it's like 1,400 pounds. So while yes, acceleration is brutal, and it will close in the gap a lot on the back straightaway, you can see the time is just tumbling compared to the Lotus. It's just losing time in every single corner. A little bit of oversteer heading onto the straightaway here. One more corner to go. Get a little hard on those brakes. It is really slow through these corners by comparison. Almost runs wide. Let me just get on the power. It is very quickly across the line. Slower than the Lotus, but faster than the Radical. Not by much. Very impressive to beat the Radical by 0.03 of a second. From this point on, it's all race cars, and we're starting off with a sort of retro race car, the Porsche RS Spider, which actually later formed the basis for the engine anyway, of the Porsche 918 hypercar, as a fun fact. But this is a pure race car designed by Team Penske and Porsche, another iconic partnership between the two brands, and it was another tour de force in the IMSA Championship. And it is continuing to be incredibly fast here. It is a naturally aspirated V8, so it does not have a huge amount of horsepower, certainly compared with the Koenigsegg, but aerodynamics. It's a proper LMP car, essentially, even though I don't think it actually competed at Le Mans. It was essentially a Le Mans prototype, and look at the speed, flat out, over the hill. No vehicle has done that before, and even the Formula 1 car didn't go over flat out over the hill, and it is faster than the Lotus. It is up. It was down on the straightaway as you would expect, but it has clawed back all that time and then some through the corners. We get on the brakes nice and easy. Little bit of curve on the inside. Really composed this car though. Really good over the curbs actually, and it is faster. A sub 112, 111.3, nearly a second faster than the Lotus. Yeah, that's a good car. But I know cars that are better. I know them because we've entered our final 3, the 3 highest PEI cars on our list today. And well, we're going to Le Mans, Porsche's home territory, even if the RS Spider never competed there, with one of the few non-Porsche winners of the 1980s, the Mercedes-Sauber C9 from 1989. Yeah, old school, very much a wedge with a wing on the back, 249 mile an hour top speed on the Mulsanne straights, 750 horsepower rear-wheel drive. It is flying. I'm surprised how composed it is, given it's from the 80s, with all that power going to the rear wheels and a relatively simplistic aerodynamic design. But ground effect is hugely powerful, and Group C cars were renowned, or infamous, depending on how you look at it, for their ground effect designs, and it is way up. Holy Toledo, that is up. Okay. Alright. Let's see how it fares. We're definitely gonna beat the Porsche, but by how much? How much will the Sauber beat that Porsche? Really aggressive on the exit of the corner, and it is a sub 110, a 108.8 for the Mercedes. That's stupidly fast. That's gonna be really hard to beat. For about 5 seconds, probably. Because we have one last open-wheeled car to talk about. No, not the Renault Formula 1 car. That's a little OP in this game and quite broken, kind of. No, I'm going with the other side of the pond, a Honda Indy car. Yes, this is a circuit configuration. It's not the Indianapolis configuration that has a custom body kit with significantly less aero. This is the full road course spec, maximum downforce, 670 horsepower. It's basically a less powerful Formula 1 car in terms of design and chassis and materials and everything like that. Even though it's a spec series, it's by far the fastest spec series in the world. And it is showing it. Wow, is it flying around these corners. Not quite flat out, interestingly enough. It's too fast through the corners to be flat out, but it's very fast. That's absurd to be that high up. The Mercedes-Sauber C9 is not a slow car, and it has 100 plus horsepower more than this. And it just eviscerated the Sauber like it was brunch. Clips the wall, again I keep saying wall, clips the sign a little bit, and it is a 106.8. That is, wow, okay. That's stupid 2 seconds faster than a Group C Le Mans car. Well, the Indy car beat the Le Mans car, so Le Mans is coming back for another chance. And we're going modern again, same year essentially. This is the Porsche 919, not the Evo, we sadly don't have that, that would be absurdly fast. But the normal Le Mans winning 919 is still pretty quick, it decimates the Indy car on the first race because hybrid 4-wheel drive. Question is though, does that Indy car just have too much aerodynamics for this closed wheel vehicle to beat it? Because this is the fastest closed wheel vehicle in the world. Absurdly fast. I think the Toyota was technically faster, but this won, so there you go. The Porsche is just stupid. Just completely stupid. It's down though. It is down, nearly lost into the wall, really trying to beat that Indy car, and it's not doing it. It's going to make up some time on the acceleration zone for the straightaway heading out of the corner because of that hybrid system, but I don't think it's going to do it. The Porsche is going, it's going, it's going, but it's not fast enough. A 107.3, half a second off the Indy car despite such a phenomenal launch. It did not ultimately have the legs to win. And by legs, I mean aerodynamic pieces, because while a 107 is a phenomenal time, it's not the winner. No surprises that the two X-Class cars, 999 Pi, are 1 and 2, but I really thought the Porsche would have it, and it didn't. Third place is a surprise for me, the Mercedes-Sauber. I thought that would be too uncontrollable and too old in terms of the handling and characteristics to be fast, but it really surprised me. Same thing with the Koenigsegg, 6th place, beating the Audi 90 Quattro and the Radical, despite both being very advanced race cars. One of them was 4-wheel drive. And then we go kind of as expected. I am impressed by both the Toyota Camry for beating the GT3 car, just like Le Mans, only an older stock car, not the next generation concept car. And I'm also impressed with the Lancia Delta. 14th place, top 15, despite being on rally tires and rally suspension. Can you imagine, just for a second, driving that Delta on dirt? That thing can make 1,000 horsepower if tuned up to the max. We only ran it at 550 because that's what they ran on the rally stages. 1,000 horsepower in 1986 from 1.8 liters is absurd. Turbocharging and supercharging is an incredible tool. And it beats a supercar, both V8s and road legal, and it beat a touring car. A very impressive result from what is, remember, technically a purchasable hot hatch, just on many, many steroids. I am, though, slightly gutted at the Shelby, because I thought it had a real chance of beating the 4-wheel drive Bentley, but it just didn't have the launch. It had the corners, it was way better than the corners, it clawed back that time on the mountain section, but it just lost that little bit too much. It could not overcome the acceleration from that EXP10, although it does get a consolation prize in beating a proper touring car, which is a nice feeling. It must be a nice feeling for, remember, a car that is not on race tires, that is not a race car, it's a road legal track car, an affordable track car that's not even like, say, the Radical, which is in a completely different league, but whatever. This was really fun. I had an absolute blast doing this. I'm hoping that Goodwood doesn't do this whole qualifying top 10 shootout again, because I do want to go to Goodwood next year. I should be done with all this college malarkey. I should be able to go that year and plan it and do it right. So I'm hoping their shootout is better, because this year's shootout was a complete joke, and I think, honestly, my no-budget Forza shootout was better in terms of quality than whatever they had. Yeah, their engines are better sounding because they're real and they're more interesting cars, but, you know, at least mine has a timer that works all the time, and it isn't rigged in McLaren's favor. Solus GT. Murray Sprouting. So anyway, that will be it for this episode, and I'll be back with more